6:30 a.m. at Millbrook Private Airport, thick October mist swirling around concrete runways, radio chatter crackling through the cold Colorado air. Victoria Chen's $6 million limousine pulls up to what should be a routine fuel stop. She steps out expecting a qualified mechanic. Instead, she finds Jake Miller. Torn flannel, grease-stained hands, lying under a beat-up Cessna like some backwoods amateur. Victoria's about to demand the real mechanic when Jake rolls out from under that engine. Something catches her eye as he wipes his hands clean. A tattoo. Not just any tattoo. Intricate technical drawings wrapped around his forearm. Military precision in every line. Her breath catches. Those aren't random designs. There's something she recognizes but can't quite place. Jake catches her staring, quickly pulls down his sleeve and gives her a look that seems to say he knows exactly what she's thinking and that she has no idea what she's gotten herself into. Victoria adjusts her designer blazer and checks her diamond watch. Her assistant Marcus hovers nearby, frantically rescheduling meetings on his tablet. "Cancel the Tokyo conference call," she snaps into her Bluetooth headset. "Move the board meeting to 3 p.m. She ends the call and strides toward Jake with the confidence of someone who's never been told no. The mist clings to her Italian leather shoes as she approaches the man who's supposed to fix her Gulfstream G650. This backwater airport better have someone competent or heads are going to roll. Jake stands slowly, wiping his hands on an oil-stained rag. At 35, he's got the kind of weathered face that comes from too many early mornings and not enough sleep. His flannel shirt has seen better decades, and his work boots are held together with duct tape and determination. But there's something in his eyes, a sharpness that doesn't match the small-town mechanic routine. He nods politely as Victoria approaches, the way locals do when city folk roll through town expecting miracles. "Excuse me," Victoria says, her voice carrying the kind of authority that makes boardrooms go silent. "I need to speak with the actual mechanic. The one who's qualified to work on sophisticated aircraft." She gestures toward her gleaming Gulfstream like it's a piece of art too precious for amateur hands. Jake's expression doesn't change, but something flickers behind his eyes. Amusement, maybe, or recognition of a familiar type. He's dealt with plenty of people who think money equals competence. "That would be me, ma'am," Jake replies, his voice steady and professional. He doesn't sound defensive or apologetic, just matter-of-fact. Victoria's eyebrows rise slightly. This grease monkey thinks he can handle a $60 million aircraft? She's about to explain exactly why that's not happening when the radio crackles to life with an emergency call. "Priority landing, Gulfstream G650, engine trouble, ETA 20 minutes. The dispatcher's voice cuts through the morning air like a knife. Jake moves toward the radio with the kind of fluid efficiency that catches Victoria off guard. He responds with perfect aviation protocol, his voice suddenly crisp and authoritative. "Roger that, tower. Emergency crew standing by, runway cleared for priority approach." Victoria stares at him, her irritation mixing with confusion. Where did this small-town mechanic learn to handle emergency communications like that? The way he moved to that radio wasn't casual, it was instinctive, trained. The emergency aircraft approaches through the mist, its engine sputtering audibly. Jake watches the sky with the focused intensity of someone who's seen this before, his hands already reaching for tools before the plane even touches down. Victoria finds herself stepping closer, drawn by his sudden transformation from laid-back local to consummate professional. As the troubled Gulfstream makes its emergency landing, Jake is already moving toward it, his every motion precise and purposeful. What exactly is she witnessing here? The landed aircraft taxis to a stop, smoke trailing from its starboard engine. Jake approaches the pilot with calm confidence, discussing the problem in technical terms that make Victoria's head spin. She catches fragments: turbine blade fatigue, combustion chamber pressure variance, bypass ratio optimization. These aren't the words of some backwoods amateur. She pulls out her phone, suddenly needing to know exactly who Jake Miller really is. But before she can start digging, Jake turns back to her with a slight smile. "Your bird's gonna need about 3 hours, he says, nodding toward Victoria's Gulfstream. "Parts are coming in from Denver. There's a diner down the road if you want coffee that doesn't come from a machine." He turns to walk away, then pauses. "Oh, and ma'am? That Pratt & Whitney turbofan you're running? Beautiful piece of engineering. Whoever modified the blade geometry knew what they were doing. Victoria's mouth falls open. How does a small-town mechanic know about the custom modifications to her aircraft's engine? Jake heads toward a small office building, leaving Victoria standing on the tarmac with more questions than answers. She watches him disappear inside, then looks back at her Gulfstream. The morning mist is starting to burn off, revealing the sleek lines of her aircraft in the growing sunlight. Marcus appears at her elbow, still clutching his tablet. "Ma'am, I've managed to reschedule most of your appointments, but the Henderson merger discussion really can't wait." Victoria nods absently, her mind still on Jake's parting words. How did he know about those engine modifications? The diner Jake mentioned sits at the edge of town like something from a Norman Rockwell painting. Victoria finds herself walking toward it, drawn by curiosity and the promise of decent coffee. The bell above the door chimes as she enters, and every head in the place turns to look at her. She's clearly not from around here. Her $1,000 suit and designer handbag stand out like a Ferrari in a parking lot full of pickup trucks. But the locals are polite, offering nods and smiles as she finds a corner booth. Jake appears 20 minutes later, having cleaned up and changed into a fresh shirt. He nods to the waitress, who immediately pours him coffee without being asked. "The usual, honey?" Martha asks, and Jake nods. Victoria watches this interaction with growing fascination. This isn't just a mechanic grabbing lunch. This is a man who belongs here, who's part of something bigger than himself. When was the last time someone knew her usual anything? "Mind if I sit?" Jake asks, approaching Victoria's table. She gestures to the empty seat across from her, curious about what he might say. Up close, she can see the calluses on his hands, the faint scars that speak of years working with dangerous machinery. But she also notices something else: the way he carries himself, the careful way he moves, like someone who's been trained for situations that require precision under pressure. "So," Victoria begins, stirring her coffee, "you seem to know quite a bit about aircraft engines." Jake shrugs, taking a sip of his own coffee. "You pick things up over the years. Internet's full of technical manuals if you know where to look." It's a casual answer, but Victoria's not buying it. She's built a $2 billion aviation company by recognizing talent, and Jake Miller is definitely not what he appears to be. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of a small girl with bright eyes and a worn backpack. She slides into the booth next to Jake, and his entire demeanor changes. The careful professionalism melts away, replaced by something warm and genuine. "Hey there, sunshine," he says, ruffling her hair. "How was school?" The little girl, Emma, Victoria realizes, launches into an animated story about her art class project. Victoria finds herself smiling despite herself. Emma pulls out a crayon drawing of an airplane, proudly showing it to Jake. "Mrs. Patterson says I'm really good at drawing machines," she announces. Jake examines the drawing with the seriousness of an art critic, praising the detail and accuracy. Victoria notices that the airplane in the drawing isn't just any plane. It's remarkably detailed, with engine specifications that seem too sophisticated for an 8-year-old's imagination. Where did Emma learn to draw aircraft with such precision? "My daddy used to fly planes like this," Emma says to Victoria, pointing to her drawing, "before Mommy got sick." Jake's expression tightens slightly, and he quickly changes the subject. But Victoria caught that moment of vulnerability, the flash of pain that crossed his face at the mention of his wife. She's starting to understand that Jake Miller has layers and secrets that go far deeper than a simple small-town mechanic. As Emma chatters about her day, Victoria studies Jake's face. There's love there, pure and uncomplicated, but also worry. The kind of worry that comes from being solely responsible for someone else's well-being. She recognizes the weight of that responsibility, even if she's never experienced it herself. When Emma mentions needing new shoes, Jake's smile falters for just a moment. Victoria catches it, the mental calculation, the quiet stress of a parent stretching every dollar. Jake walks Emma to the school bus, and Victoria watches through the diner window as father and daughter share a moment of easy affection. Emma hugs Jake tightly before climbing aboard, and he stands watching until the bus disappears around the corner. When he returns to the table, some of the lightness has gone out of his eyes. "She's a good kid," Victoria says quietly. Jake nods, stirring his coffee. She's everything good I've ever done. The afternoon passes in unexpected conversation. Victoria finds herself talking to Jake about things she rarely discusses: the pressure of running a company, the isolation of success, the way achievements can feel hollow when there's no one to share them with. Jake listens with the kind of attention that's become rare in her world. No one's trying to impress her or gain something from her. It's just two people talking. And Victoria can't remember the last time she felt this. Normal. As the sun begins to set, Jake's phone rings. It's the parts supplier from Denver. The components for Victoria's aircraft have arrived. Jake excuses himself to handle the repairs, and Victoria follows him back to the airport. She's not sure why she doesn't just wait at the hotel Marcus booked for her. Maybe it's curiosity about the repair process, or maybe she's just not ready for this strange day to end. Watching Jake work is like watching a master craftsman. His hands move with practiced precision, and he explains each step of the repair process in terms that are both technical and accessible. Victoria finds herself genuinely interested, asking questions about engine mechanics and aircraft systems. Jake answers patiently, clearly enjoying the opportunity to share his knowledge with someone who appreciates the complexity of what he does. "You know," Victoria says as Jake reinstalls a component, "you could probably make a lot more money doing this work in a bigger city." Jake pauses, considering her words. "Money isn't everything," he says finally. "Emma's got friends here, good teachers. This place has been good to us." Victoria nods, understanding more than she expected to. She spent her entire adult life chasing the next deal, the next acquisition, the next milestone. When was the last time she considered what good might mean? As Jake works, his sleeve rides up again, revealing more of that intriguing tattoo. Victoria tries not to stare, but she can't help herself. The lines are too precise, too purposeful to be decorative. They look like schematics, technical drawings, but of what? And why would a small-town mechanic have something like that permanently etched on his skin? Every time she thinks she's figured Jake out, another layer reveals itself. The repair is complete, as the last light fades from the sky. Jake runs through the system checks with methodical thoroughness, explaining each step to Victoria. The engine purrs to life, running smoother than it has in months. "She's ready to go," Jake announces, wiping his hands on a clean rag. Victoria nods, but she's surprised to find herself reluctant to leave. This little airport, this strange man with his hidden depths, it's all far more interesting than her usual routine. As Victoria prepares to depart, she turns back to Jake. "Thank you," she says, and means it, for everything. Jake nods, his expression unreadable in the hangar lights. "Safe travels, ma'am." Victoria starts to walk toward her aircraft, then stops. "Jake?" He looks up from his tools. "That tattoo," she says carefully. "It's not just decorative, is it?" Jake's expression doesn't change, but she sees something flicker in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition that she's seen more than he intended. "Just some old ink," Jake says carefully. "Nothing special." But Victoria knows he's deflecting, and they both know she knows it. She nods slowly, filing away this moment for later consideration. As her Gulfstream takes off into the star-filled Colorado sky, Victoria finds herself thinking about Jake Miller and wondering what other secrets are hidden beneath that modest exterior. 3 weeks later, Victoria finds herself researching small airports in Colorado. She tells herself it's for business purposes. Her company is always looking for new maintenance facilities. But she knows she's lying. She's thinking about Jake Miller, about the contradiction between his circumstances and his capabilities, about the way he'd looked at her when she'd mentioned his tattoo. She's thinking about Emma's drawing, about the technical precision in a child's artwork, about the way Jake's entire demeanor had changed when he'd touched that radio. Victoria's investigation turns up more questions than answers. Jake Miller has lived in Millbrook for 4 years, since shortly after his wife's death. Before that, there's a gap in his employment history, a gap that coincides with his military service record, but the details of that service are largely classified, which only deepens the mystery. What kind of mechanic has a classified military background, and why is he fixing small planes in the middle of nowhere when he clearly has the skills for something far more sophisticated? The breakthrough comes when Victoria's head of security runs a more comprehensive background check. Jake Miller isn't just any veteran, he's former Air Force, with a specialty in advanced aircraft systems. The scattered details paint a picture of someone who was far more than a simple mechanic. Flight engineer, systems specialist, someone who worked on aircraft that most people don't even know exist. Victoria stares at the report, pieces clicking into place like components in a complex machine. Victoria makes a decision that surprises even her. She schedules another flight to Colorado, this time with a maintenance issue that's entirely fabricated. As her Gulfstream touches down at Millbrook Private Airport, she feels a flutter of anticipation that has nothing to do with aircraft repairs. Jake emerges from the hangar, wiping his hands on a familiar rag, and Victoria realizes she's been looking forward to this moment for 3 weeks. "Engine trouble again?" Jake asks with a slight smile that suggests he knows exactly why she's here. Victoria nods, suddenly feeling foolish. What is she doing? She's a CEO worth hundreds of millions of dollars, flying across the country to see a small-town mechanic who's made it clear he's not interested in anything beyond their professional interaction. But Jake's smile takes the sting out of her embarrassment, and she finds herself relaxing despite herself. This time, Emma is waiting at the airport when school lets out. She runs to Jake with the unbridled enthusiasm of a child who hasn't learned to hide her emotions yet. "Daddy, the airplane lady is back!" Emma's delight is infectious, and Victoria finds herself genuinely happy to see the little girl again. Emma shows her another drawing, this one of Victoria's Gulfstream, rendered with the same impossible detail that had caught Victoria's attention before. "Emma's got a gift," Jake says, studying his daughter's artwork. "She sees things other people miss." Victoria nods, understanding that he's talking about more than just artistic ability. Emma sees the world with the clarity that comes from not yet learning what's supposed to be impossible. Looking at the drawing, Victoria realizes that Emma has captured details about her aircraft that she herself had never noticed. As Jake works on the fabricated maintenance issue, Victoria finds herself drawn into conversation with Emma. The little girl is bright, curious, and utterly without pretense. She asks Victoria about her work, her travels, her life in the city. Victoria finds herself giving honest answers, describing a world that suddenly seems far more complicated than it needs to be. Emma listens with a kind of attention that adults rarely give each other, nodding thoughtfully at Victoria's responses. "Do you like your job?" Emma asks, with the directness that only children can manage. Victoria pauses, considering the question seriously. "It's complicated," she says finally. Emma nods as if this makes perfect sense. "Daddy says grown-up jobs are like that sometimes. But he also says if you're good at something, you should try to help people with it." Victoria looks over at Jake, who's pretending not to listen while he works. How does a man who's clearly overqualified for his current position maintain such a healthy perspective on work and life? The repairs finished quickly, too quickly, Victoria realizes. Jake's efficiency has worked against her desire to extend this visit. As he runs through the final checks, Victoria finds herself grasping for reasons to stay longer. "The engine seems to be running a bit rough," she suggests hopefully. Jake gives her a look that's equal parts amusement and understanding. "Runs like a Swiss watch," he says gently. "You're good to go?" As Victoria prepares to leave, Emma runs up with another drawing. This one shows Victoria, Jake, and Emma standing together beside the Gulfstream. "For you," Emma says, pressing the paper into Victoria's hands. "So you won't forget us." Victoria feels something catch in her throat as she looks at the drawing. In Emma's innocent perspective, the three of them look like they belong together, like they're a family. Jake walks Victoria to her aircraft, Emma skipping alongside them. "Thank you," Victoria says, and this time she's not just talking about the maintenance. Jake nods, understanding passing between them. "Take care of yourself," he says quietly. "And maybe next time, you don't need to invent engine problems." Victoria feels her cheeks warm, but Jake's smile takes any sting out of his words. He knows exactly what she's been doing, and he's not entirely opposed to it. As Victoria's Gulfstream climbs into the evening sky, she finds herself thinking about Emma's drawing. The little girl had captured something that Victoria hadn't even realized she was feeling, a sense of belonging, of connection, of being part of something bigger than herself. For the first time in years, Victoria wonders if there might be more to life than the next deal, the next acquisition, the next milestone in a career that's beginning to feel as empty as it is successful. But life has a way of interfering with personal revelations. Victoria's return to California brings a crisis that demands her complete attention. A major defense contract is in jeopardy, and the board of directors is beginning to question her leadership. She throws herself into salvaging the deal, working 18-hour days and sleeping in her office. Jake Miller and his small-town airport fade into the background as Victoria fights to save her company's future. The crisis peaks when Victoria discovers that the defense contract involves aircraft modifications that are eerily similar to technology she's seen before. As she reviews the technical specifications, something clicks in her memory. The precision, the innovation, the elegant solutions to complex problems, she's seen this work before. She's seen it in the modifications to her own aircraft, in the casual way Jake had diagnosed engine problems, in the impossible detail of Emma's drawings. Victoria pulls up Jake's military records again, this time cross-referencing them with the defense contract specifications. The pieces fall into place with stunning clarity. Jake Miller isn't just a former Air Force engineer. He's the former Air Force engineer who developed the very technology her company is now bidding to produce. The man she's been condescending to, the mechanic she assumed was beneath her notice, is the architect of innovations worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The revelation hits Victoria like a physical blow. She's built her career on recognizing talent, on seeing potential where others see only surface details, but she completely missed the most significant talent she'd ever encountered. Worse, she'd dismissed him based on his circumstances, his appearance, his choice to prioritize his daughter's well-being over his own career advancement. Victoria stares at the classified documents on her screen, feeling smaller than she has in decades. Victoria's next flight to Colorado isn't business, it's personal. She needs to see Jake again, to apologize, to understand how someone with his capabilities ended up fixing small planes in the middle of nowhere. But when she arrives at Millbrook Private Airport, she finds it buzzing with unusual activity. Emergency vehicles surround the hangar, and there's a crowd gathered near the main building. Victoria's heart stops as she realizes something terrible has happened. Jake had been working on a fuel system when a leak ignited. The explosion wasn't large, but it was enough to cause serious burns and smoke inhalation. By the time Victoria reaches the hospital, Jake is in surgery and Emma is sitting in the waiting room with a neighbor, her face streaked with tears. "Is Daddy going to be okay?" Emma asks Victoria, and Victoria realizes she doesn't know. She sits beside the little girl, holding her hand, and promises that everything will be fine. A promise she has no authority to make. The next few hours pass in a blur of medical consultations, insurance paperwork, and trying to comfort a frightened child. Victoria finds herself handling details she's never had to consider, making sure Emma has clean clothes, arranging for meals, calling the school to report an absence. It's exhausting and overwhelming, but also strangely meaningful. For the first time in years, Victoria feels like she's doing something that truly matters. Jake's surgery is successful, but his recovery will be long. The burns on his hands and arms will heal, but they'll leave scars. More concerning is the damage to his lungs from smoke inhalation. The doctor explains that Jake's military service exposed him to various chemicals and particulates that make this kind of injury particularly serious. Victoria listens to the medical jargon, but what she hears is that Jake Miller, the man who's been too proud to ask for help, is going to need assistance whether he wants it or not. Emma falls asleep in the uncomfortable hospital chair, and Victoria finds herself keeping vigil beside Jake's bed. He looks smaller somehow, diminished by the medical equipment and bandages. Victoria studies his face, seeing past the injuries to the man beneath. She thinks about the choices he's made, the sacrifices he's endured, the quiet dignity with which he's built a life for himself and his daughter. When did her own choices become so focused on acquisition and achievement that she forgot what actually matters? Jake wakes up the next morning to find Victoria still there, Emma curled up in the chair beside her. "Hey," he says, his voice hoarse from the breathing tube. Victoria feels tears she didn't know she was holding back. "Hey yourself," she says softly. "How are you feeling?" Jake tries to sit up, winces and settles back against the pillows. "Like I got hit by a truck," he admits. "But I'm alive, and Emma's okay. That's what matters." Victoria spends the next week in Millbrook, helping Emma adjust to her father's hospitalization. She's surprised by how naturally she falls into the routine of school pickups, homework help, and bedtime stories. Emma accepts her presence with the adaptability of childhood, and Victoria finds herself genuinely enjoying the responsibility. When was the last time she felt needed for something beyond her business acumen? Jake's recovery progresses slowly. The burns will heal, but the lung damage is more serious than initially thought. His military service exposed him to chemical agents that have compromised his respiratory system, and the smoke inhalation has aggravated the condition. The doctor explains that Jake will need ongoing medical care, possibly for the rest of his life. Victoria watches Jake process this information with the same quiet strength he's shown throughout their acquaintance. The financial implications of Jake's injury become clear when Victoria helps Emma sort through the mail. Medical bills, insurance claims, and notice of Jake's inability to work pile up on the kitchen table. Victoria realizes that Jake's pride has prevented him from applying for veterans' benefits he's entitled to, and his savings are quickly depleting. Without his income from the airport, Jake and Emma face the possibility of losing their home. Victoria makes a decision that surprises even her. She contacts her company's Veterans Affairs liaison and arranges for Jake to receive the benefits he's earned through his military service. She does this quietly, without fanfare, ensuring that Jake receives the assistance as a matter of right rather than charity. When Jake questions the sudden approval of his benefits claim, Victoria simply says that sometimes the system works the way it's supposed to. But Victoria's involvement goes deeper than bureaucratic assistance. She finds herself genuinely caring about Jake and Emma's future, about their well-being in ways that have nothing to do with business or obligation. She realizes that her feelings for Jake have evolved from curiosity to respect, to something much more complex. She's falling in love with a man who's shown her what real strength looks like, what genuine priorities mean, what it feels like to be part of something bigger than yourself. As Jake's recovery progresses, Victoria splits her time between Colorado and California, managing her company remotely while helping Emma navigate her father's illness. The arrangement is temporary, but it feels more natural than anything Victoria has done in years. She's discovered that success without connection is just elaborate loneliness, and that the most important achievements are often the quietest ones. The revelation Victoria has been dreading finally comes when Jake is strong enough to have difficult conversations. She shows him the defense contract documents, explains how his innovations have become the foundation of her company's most profitable ventures. Jake's reaction surprises her. He's not angry about the money or recognition he's missed. Instead, he seems relieved that his work has found a purpose beyond the military applications he originally designed it for. "I never wanted to profit from making weapons more efficient," Jake explains as they sit in his hospital room. "But if that technology can make civilian aircraft safer, more efficient, then maybe something good came from all of it." Victoria realizes that Jake's perspective on his work, like his perspective on everything else, is fundamentally different from hers. He measures success by impact rather than income, by contribution rather than conquest. Victoria's final revelation comes not through research or investigation, but through a simple conversation with Emma. As they work on homework together, Emma mentions that her father's tattoo tells a story. "It's a map," she explains with the matter-of-fact tone children use for obvious truths. "Of all the places Daddy helped people." Victoria stares at the little girl, understanding dawning. Jake's tattoo isn't just technical drawings, it's a memorial, a record of missions where his innovations saved lives. When Jake is finally released from the hospital, Victoria is there to drive him home. As they pull into the driveway of his small apartment, Jake turns to her with an expression she can't quite read. "Thank you," he says simply, "for everything." Victoria nods, feeling the weight of unspoken words between them. They both know that something has fundamentally changed in their relationship, but neither is ready to define what that means. The next few weeks establish a new normal. Victoria continues splitting her time between Colorado and California, and Jake gradually returns to light work at the airport. Emma thrives with the additional attention, her drawings becoming even more detailed and imaginative. Victoria finds herself thinking less about acquisitions and mergers, and more about the simple pleasure of being part of a family, even an unconventional one. One evening, as Victoria helps Emma with a school project, the little girl looks up from her drawings and says, "I wish you could stay with us forever." Victoria's heart clenches at the simple honesty of the statement. She wishes the same thing, but she's not sure how to make it work. Her life is in California, her company requires her attention, and Jake has never suggested that he wants anything more than friendship from her. The answer comes from an unexpected source. Victoria's board of directors, impressed by her company's recent success with the defense contract, offers her the option to relocate the company's research and development division. They've identified several potential sites, including a facility near Colorado Springs that would be perfect for aerospace innovation. Victoria stares at the proposal, realizing that it might be possible to have both the career she's built and the family she's discovered. Victoria presents the idea to Jake carefully, not wanting to pressure him or assume too much about their relationship. To her surprise, Jake's response is immediate and positive. "Emma would love it," he says, "and I'd love to see what you could build here." Victoria realizes that Jake's answer isn't just about the business opportunity. It's about the possibility of building something together, of combining their different strengths into something neither could achieve alone. The transition takes months of planning and negotiation, but eventually Victoria finds herself moving her company's most innovative division to Colorado. Jake becomes her chief consultant on military aircraft modifications, bringing his unique perspective to projects that previously existed only in theoretical form. Emma thrives in the new environment, her artistic talents nurtured by exposure to cutting-edge technology and engineering concepts. 6 months after the accident that changed everything, Victoria stands in her new office overlooking the Colorado mountains. Jake appears in the doorway, his scars barely visible now, a cup of coffee in his hand. "Thought you might need this," he says, setting the coffee on her desk. Victoria looks at him, still amazed by the journey that brought them together. "Thank you," she says, and they both know she's talking about more than just the coffee. Emma's latest drawing sits framed on Victoria's desk, a picture of all three of them standing in front of the new facility, arms around each other, looking like the family they've become. Victoria studies the drawing, remembering the day she first saw Jake Miller and completely misunderstood everything about him. She thinks about the assumptions she made, the prejudices she held, the way she almost missed the most important relationship of her life because she was too focused on surface details to see the depth beneath. Jake joins her at the window, and they stand together looking out at the mountains. "Any regrets?" he asks quietly. Victoria considers the question seriously. She's given up the familiar rhythms of her old life, the status and recognition that came with running a major corporation, the predictable challenges of a world she understood completely. In return, she's gained something far more valuable, a sense of purpose that goes beyond profit, a family that wasn't planned but feels inevitable, and the knowledge that the most important discoveries often come from the most unexpected places. "None," Victoria says finally, taking Jake's hand. "Not a single one." As the sun sets over the Colorado mountains, Victoria reflects on the strange journey that brought her here, a chance encounter at a small airport, a moment of curiosity about a mysterious tattoo, and the gradual realization that the most important things in life often come disguised as ordinary moments. She's learned that true success isn't about what you achieve, but about who you become in the process of achieving it. Emma runs into the office, her latest drawing in hand. This one shows their new facility with dozens of aircraft surrounding it, each one detailed with the precision that has become her signature. "Look," she says excitedly, "I drew all the planes Daddy's going to help make better." Victoria and Jake exchange a look over Emma's head, both understanding that this little girl has captured something essential about their shared future. They're not just building aircraft, they're building a legacy, a family, and a life that honors both innovation and love. The story that began with a CEO's condescension toward a small-town mechanic has evolved into something far more complex and beautiful. Victoria has learned that respect is earned through character, rather than circumstances, that the most valuable talents often come without impressive credentials, and that the best partnerships are built on mutual understanding rather than equal resources. Jake has discovered that accepting help doesn't diminish your strength, that sharing your gifts can be more rewarding than hiding them, and that love can arrive in the most unexpected packages. As evening settles over their new Colorado home, Victoria realizes that she's finally found what she didn't even know she was looking for. Success, it turns out, isn't about reaching the top of someone else's ladder. It's about building something meaningful with the people who matter most. And sometimes, the most profound changes begin with the simplest moments. A broken-down aircraft, a mysterious tattoo, and the courage to look beyond first impressions to discover the extraordinary hiding in plain sight.